you don't actually learn very much from succeeding.
Because we moved on. Like we're
Well,
winners
because
here.
it worked.
It's a celebration. Oh
It
yeah,
worked. It
yeah.
worked. I mean, where I find I do the most learning is when I don't succeed,
Mm,
as long as I have a practice for how to deconstruct what I can, do differently. So what's one or more things you can start doing differently? What's one or more things you can stop doing differently? And what new capability did I pick up, even though I didn't succeed at what I meant to do? Is there anything new I could do that I couldn't before? And those
yeah.
are the three areas that I found most helpful to inventory every time I fail to accomplish something the way I meant to.
Price tag's still on there. Oh my God. And the name brand of the shirt.
Hello, everyone. On today's episode, I'm excited to be joined by my good friend Eric McDermott. All right. By day, Eric is an equity partner at Pacific Advisors, a financial services firm serving more than 60,000 clients with over $4 billion with a B in assets, $4 billion in assets under management. Eric holds 8 advanced accredited financial designations, including a certified financial planner, tax planning, certified professional, and behind the suit in his other company, Nexpectations, Eric brings complex ideas to life, leveraging his unique brand of visual storytelling, which has earned him national recognition, including National Best Business Influencer of the Year, more than 500,000 TikTok followers, 3-time best-selling author, 3-time international TED speaker, and numerous published Forbes articles. Man, you know what that reminds me of, Eric? Because when we used to do that practice of introducing each other, I don't think I could have introduced you that well.
Well, like you, I've added a couple of accomplishments in the last couple of years. So
Wow, that's pretty good stuff, man. So Eric and I have known each other for a really, really long time. We've taught together, we've learned together, we've helped each other build businesses together, and some of his advice through his background is, I would say, is not only helped our business thrive, but it actually probably saved us multiple times when I think we would have gone out of business without some of the strategies we instituted, thanks to your help. So it's a really honor to have you on the podcast, Fish Factor, and thanks for being here.
glad to be able to join. It's my pleasure.
What we're kind of prepping a little bit for this, and I'm thinking, man, tell me about the TED Talk. So there's 3, but I think there's another one coming, right?
No, three is it for now. I had I'd always had it on my list of things I wanted to get to do a TEDx at some point, and I had 3 different ideas for topics. Right, you're supposed to have one big idea, and I, of course, leave it to me. I have way too many big ideas apparently. So I had 3 of them, and I could not decide which of the 3 would be best. So then I sent it out to, in fact, you and other people in my networks that I was close to, and said, hey, which of these 3 should I submit for a TEDx? And it turns out everybody in my networks, I think, including you, were as useless as I was. And you're all like, oh, these are all worthwhile. And so that didn't help. And so what I did is I ended up saying, you know what? I'm just going to apply to some TEDx's, and I'll use all 3 topics, and I'll just apply, and TEDx will vote by just picking one of them. Well, they did. They picked one. And then a couple weeks later, all of a sudden the other one got picked. And then a month or 2 later, the 3rd one got picked. And so you can't repeat the same topic, in any 2 TEDx's. So I did 3 completely unique TEDx's in 6 months across 3 continents. And that was not the original plan. It was just to do a TEDx.
Where were the continents? What locations were you in?
I was in Asia for the first one. That was in the Makati, Philippines. And the second one was here in California, Northern California, in Sonoma County. And the 3rd one was just a couple months ago in Amsterdam.
Incredible. Which one? I don't know if you can. I don't know if there's a way to assess this, but which one was the most popular? I guess as far as audience or TEDx goes.
Well, the jury's still out on that one.
Okay.
Because only 2 of them have made it yet so far to the TED YouTube, if you will, or the TED website, either way, however you access TED Talks. But they take a couple months, until they actually show up online for everybody to see. So the first one I did in October, and that was the one in the Philippines. That one did hit the internet. Obviously, you do it in person, and then it eventually shows up online. It so far has over 100,000 views and seems to be well received as a topic. How what internet trolls can teach us about being human. That was that topic.
Yeah.
The one in Sonoma, in Northern California, was, every TEDx is organized differently, different organizers, right? And the ones in Sonoma, I'll have to hand it to them. They have been doing this for, I think, 15 plus years, and were very, very experienced in what they were doing. And they created a really remarkable community event. Hundreds of people, huge theater, really polished, some big names there, of which I would not consider myself one of the big names per se. And that one just landed like last weekend or 2 weekends ago, and is just starting to go on the internet part of things. And then the Amsterdam one probably won't show up until maybe later this month or early next month.
Well, the most recent one that you shared with me around truth, I guess, is the simple version of it.
Yeah, truth and trust in an age of misinformation.
Yeah, and it's so relevant. Like we've been, in some of the group chats that we have with our network of business professionals, there's conversations that come up about how not just AI in general, but just how misleading it can be. Like I see all these video commercials for products, and I have to watch them, and I don't think that's real. I mean, it looks so real, but there's no way that hose nozzle could have done that. But here's the funny part. I'm going to buy it just to find out because it's like $5. And I thought, where am I missing the boat?
I think they're counting on you doing that. So
right. I mean, I fell right into the trap, even though I knew it was a trap. It's pretty amazing. So one of the things that I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say that one in particular was, I think, especially surprising because I got an email a month or so after doing the talk from the organizers at the TEDx in Sonoma County, and they said, "Hey, sorry, your TEDx is going to be delayed from appearing online, on TED's channel, and the reason is because this only happens for 0.7% of all TEDx's, but yours got chosen by the global TED group, whoever those powers are on high, as an editor's pick, and so I guess apparently undergoes some other process for showing up online, but it showed up when it finally came through. And I think that's less to do with how amazing I am, although I'd like to think I did a good job, and just really, to your point, just how relevant the topic of truth and trust in an age of misinformation is. And so I think that topic definitely must have appealed to others as well. So
it's super relevant right now. I mean, like what I was going to say too, and I forgot is, we notice these narratives come around on social media, and without having the background to understand how we learn and couple to things we see regularly, which is something you and I studied.
Yeah.
The younger generation, doesn't even matter. It could be a current generation or older generation. They don't always hold that the way they're speaking and thinking is because they saw something on a social media post. Not necessarily made it true, but it affects how they think. And one of the things I notice all the time is how my kids, at least, who are in their 20s, I mean, they're not kids, are so against AI because they think it destroys the environment and water and taking and all of these narratives that they're exposed to. But I don't know if it's accurate or true, and I don't know that they would know how to tell. But being an observer of that is and so I think that's one of the reasons I found your talk relevant, because it's like it's good to question everything. Really
it's good to question everything, and at the same time, none of us has the time and capacity to literally question everything. And so that becomes this paradox, right? Of, it's important that we remain observers first and believers second. And perhaps from my point of view, it seems like a lot of people are racing to believing first and observing second. And I think that maybe is what you're pointing out. I think the challenge is that there's probably some grain of truth in all those sentiments that you're describing, right? I mean, certainly AI must be using some proportionate amount of electricity. There's data centers opening up all over the planet, right?
Right.
So of course there is. But I don't know that anybody is looking at it in terms of, okay, but expand that in terms of how does that compare to other things you do in a day? My kids, leave on lights in the house for, a whole day long, right? And it turns out, 100 AI queries later, it wasn't as much as the fact that they left several lights on all day while we went out. So, it's just a relative factor. I mean, it's certainly important to be conscientious of the impact we're having in the world. It's just perhaps how do we expand that picture beyond just that one isolated grain of truth in the context of what we actually need to look at overall.
Or I'm thinking like, I watch all this, and we have 2 washing machines and 2 dryers in our house, because in the old days, when I was more involved in the fish market part of it, going in the house covered in fish blood and guts.
Oh yeah, right.
I'll have my own in the garage, but
Right.
you can't hear them from in the garage. So I noticed all this laundry goes through the garage ones, and I think to myself, I just have one daughter living at home, and I know she did all her laundry a few days ago. How could she wear this much clothing in like 3 days? This many loads of laundry going. I don't understand. So just like the light analogy.
Yep.
Anyway, so hey, one of the things that I've always, so I think both of us have a similar talent in taking complex things and making them simple for people to understand. But dude, you're like next level with that. And it's always like blown me away because when we started studying business together, so Eric and I know each other through the Aji Advantage, at the time it was Aji Network, and we studied with the same business people, business philosophy. And one of the things they would tell us, and I didn't hear this, it didn't resonate with me in the beginning until I'd left and come back. It's like, we notice sometimes it takes students 8 years before they can really hold what we're teaching and use it. And I'm like, who has 8 years to waste?
Right.
But I understand, but I'm still like 20 some years later. I think you are too. Well, so, that's how that works together with this thing and that. And it's sort of an algorithm. And if you do it in order, you can produce this outcome. I just didn't put it all together because it's so complex. But you have managed to do something that I've never seen. And I think even our mentor teacher, the founder of that philosophy, said it to you when we were co-leading a session. It's like you figured out how to take all this and make it visual, which is such an amazing talent. Because both of us, we didn't know each other when we were kids. We're the same age. We still kind of like the same comic books. I got my Spider-Man and my Avengers back here.
Yeah. No, I've got my childhood favorites back here too.
Yeah, and I used to, that book. I think I actually bought it for you, How to Draw
Yes, you
Comics
did.
the Marvel
You
Way. I
did.
was like, I used to use this to draw comics when I was like up until about 13, maybe. I don't know when I stopped. But you like your talent to take the complex and turn it into a visual aid. Like it's so impressive to me all the time. I actually did an entire podcast episode using one of your sketch maps, and so. I wanted to ask you a little bit, like, what's your, I don't know how to say it, like, when did you discover that you were able to do that? And what are some of the, like, experiences you had with other business professionals where it's helped them?
Yeah, look, I don't know if I can isolate it to one spot, but what I would say is, first, I did it for myself. Because things were getting so complex in the world. I ever since I was a little kid, like you were talking about, I used to always doodle and sketch things, and things like that. And then when all of a sudden the Apple Pencil comes out and digital inking becomes possible, it sort of reinvigorated this ability for me to go back to more of a hand drawn. I had for a long time done graphic design for many years, and sort of translated it into visuals that were more like PowerPoints or professionally designed graphic design work. And it was really only in the last decade or so since really the Apple Pencil and the iPad and digital inking became popular again, that I went back to my roots of really sort of sketching things out, complex ideas. And I think that what helps me in that is that I had somebody sitting next to me at actually one of our conferences, right? I had somebody sitting next to me and they were taking notes, and they look over and I'm sitting there taking my notes, and there are all these visual relationships to what I'm listening to. And he leans over and he goes, "Wait, you don't take notes like I take notes." And I go, "Well, no, I mean, I draw stuff out." He goes, No. He goes, "I'm literally writing on the words that are being spoken. You're doing something else." And I said, "Yes, I am not writing down the words being spoken. I'm not even drawing the words being spoken. I am drawing the relationship of what's being spoken to what I've already learned and can apply it to. And I'm trying to understand, almost like someone drops a bunch of puzzle pieces at my feet and I'm piecing them together visually." And so my drawings aren't visual representations of words. My drawings are a synthesis, if you will, of the relationship of what's happening and the context and the consequence. And so I think that's what helped me to hold complex stuff, is I was like, wait, how does this fit with this? Oh, that's how it fits. Oh, I can use that. Is that a cycle I can repeat? And can I do this? And can I do that? And I'm like, oh, I can make a model out of this. And all of a sudden I just started making it actionable for myself. And I kind of figured actually for the longest time that my sketches would be, I don't know, too childlike or sophomoric to be, well received in the business world.
Not at all.
So I kind of kept it to myself for a long time. And then all of a sudden I found out that the opposite was true. I had a lot of folks, you and others, that were like, "Hey, wait, can I have that? Can I borrow that? Can I see that? Can you explain this to me?" And so the ultimate experiment for me was, as you know, to really test how many generations I could make that work for. And that actually launched my TikTok efforts, right? I want to see, could I reach 2 generations down, being the, as trendy as a librarian, as a Gen X balding dad, could I reach down to Gen Z's most coveted social media platform, and use that visual brand of storytelling to tell complex things in literally less than 30 to 60 seconds, right? And so once I knew it could pass that test, and once I knew I was presenting to enterprise business leaders across the globe using this, what I thought would be revered as childhood sketches, I found out, nope, this has a place. And, since then, teams all the way up to the likes of Google have used my sketch maps, right? So.
Yeah. So what are some of the companies that you've worked with, and what has it produced for them and value, I guess? I don't know if you can assess that.
I can't speak for the value it's produced in them, like, cause I can't put words in their mouth. That wouldn't be fair. And I don't know how they're using it day to day. What I would say is, I obviously the most prestigious of them is for one of the teams, at Google, would certainly be the household name. Most of the work I do, I don't really make an offer of doing custom sketch maps for folks. Like, I don't have enough time and capacity for that.
That makes me feel really special, because I know we do.
Well, yeah, because for close friends, I've done some stress testing of my own thinking, and you've been the benefactor of that. But what I'm really looking to do is to use that visual brand of storytelling as a way to do one-to-many communication, not one-to-one, right? So I'm not looking to create a bunch of sketch maps for a particular company per se, things like that. While I can certainly do it, what I'm more interested in is taking complex stuff, creating a visual representation that isn't just a picture of words, but rather something actionable, right? How to make the complex actionable is my mantra, actually. And so when I did, for example, one of the challenges I ran into with the TEDx's is like one of the TEDx organizers had a 5-slide limit to how many slides you could have in your presentation. And I'm like, oh, that's not going to work. You've not seen my visual brand of storytelling. And it was one of the situations where I used the sketch maps really as a way to build the story over time, right? And so in a 10-minute TED Talk, one of those was 145 slides, but you wouldn't know it because I was incrementally unfolding this diagram, the sketch, over the course of that 10 minutes as I told the story. And so you get this audio presentation of me speaking the relationship of these, while visual supporting it is showing up just in time, not cluttering it, all at once, but just incrementally releasing it little by little. So that's probably the future I see of it, is really trying to bring more of that forth in larger formats like public speaking and social media and things like that.
Was it difficult to shift that thinking where it's 5 or 6 slides to 45? Like, how did you get them to agree to that? Do you have to show them first?
In that particular instance, it was interesting because everybody's got their mind's eye of, like, when they hear slides, they think of traditional PowerPoints and bullet points, and they're right. Nobody wants a bunch of those, right? I just found that it's one of those, I guess, to quote Bruno Mars, "Don't believe me, just watch."
Yeah.
So I said, look, before you rule it in or out, or before I tell you how many slides I have, how about I just do a run through for you real quick? And I'll just show you the presentation using the visual slides. And so when I actually ran through it for them, they're like, okay, fine, show us. And so I ran through it. And at the end I said, well, how was that? And they said, yeah, we thought that was great. It really was vibrant, told the story. We felt we tracked. It really made it, easy to engage. And I said, good. I said, so does that mean you're okay with the number of slides I have? And they all looked at each other, 4 organizers, and they said, yeah, those are great. And I go, okay, so I'm going to submit them as is. We agree? And they go, yeah. I said, okay, great. Now that we settled that, how many slides do you think I had? And they're like, oh, I don't know, 8, 9, 10. I said, oh, no. For that one, I said, no, I had 60, like 5 dozen slides. And they're like, they just couldn't believe it, because they're not slides in the traditional sense. They're very incremental visual build outs of a story.
Yeah. I know the first time I saw you doing that was you and I had a talk planned on, I think we agreed it was on identities, which was 2020. And then all of a sudden the pandemic hit. We couldn't go to the conference to do it. So you had to come up with an innovation on how to do it through, I think it was Zoom we were using. And I was watching you develop those things going, oh my gosh, it's incredible. And I think everybody signed up to go to our session just to see what you were going to unveil. Because it was a different way to teach and educate. And then I've watched for years as we would do more of those, right? We did identities, we did spine of the business concerns, six parts, fundamentals of a business, of putting a business together, I guess you could say. We did monopoly
strategies and monopolies and
auctions. Auctions, that's right. Yeah, totally forgot. And in each one, you would unveil an entirely new sketch map you designed around the concept, and people would. So I think sometimes we offered to give them away, or you could,
Yeah.
we had contests. We had an auction going for one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just so cool to see, and then you would also be busy up to like 3 weeks before because everybody would ask you if they could have
Yes.
for their
Right.
sessions.
That's right.
They'd
That's
see
right.
there in all the different sessions that people were teaching because this is a visual aid, like taking the complex and making it visual. To me, it's helpful for multiple reasons. I mean, one, it helps you understand it better. Two, it helps you teach it. But three, it's also the opportunity when someone doesn't know what you're speaking of, like strategically. It's like, well, look at this. This is how you make money. Okay, these are the different parts. These are the components. And I have noticed, like, I'll give you an example. And this isn't a sketch map example, but it's a visual example. When we were trying to open our Long Beach location, the family was like, why can't we just open it next week? And because they couldn't hold all the cascading consequences in the timeline. Right. So my request to the person running it was, we got this giant whiteboard, make a red line for the fire permit, do a blue one for a health permit, do another one for building and safety, do another one for training, and then get everybody to agree on how long it's going to take until we're ready to open on each of those colors and put them by dates. And they'll see, like, we got 6 to 8 weeks left before we can actually function. But they had to be visualized because they couldn't hold the timeline and the strategy and the narrative and all that behind it. So I'm always finding if I don't check in for listening in our meetings and presentations, I can't guarantee what people heard or listened. But if it's visual, and that's right there for them, and then you can always refer back to it.
Yeah, no, that's my experience as well. And it's why I found it so helpful, because it also creates a different kind of agreement than just words alone. What I mean by agreement is if we agree that this has this relationship to that, and that causes these three outcomes, and that we want to go pursue this second one, then there's a visual way in which people hold that differently, and we now can coordinate differently as a result. And so, yeah, there's that visual alignment. Oh, you do have one right behind your head there, don't you?
Oh, I have the small one, yeah.
Oh, the small version, right?
Oh, the one that off is the other. That's the one that pulled the paint.
Yeah, you do have one back there, yeah. But it is, and the reason that I know that they worked for the way that they do is because they worked for me. Like, I knew that would be I couldn't hold it all. I was struggling with it, and I think in our business program, I would sometimes get credit for being able to hold more of the distinctions and relationships and fundamentals than a lot of other people. And people were wondering, like, people thought, do you have a photographic memory? I'm like, no, I don't. And they couldn't understand what I was doing. And it's like, once you're forced to have to distill something, right, into its relationships to everything else visually, you just hold it so much better.
Well, it's daunting too, because so that sketch behind me, the one I talked about, was basically the 12 parts of the fundamental strategy that we've learned from our teacher, Toby. And it's 1,200 pages to learn it over the course of a year, Right. And then he put it in a book that he put on Amazon that's 450 pages or whatever it is, and then 4 books of notes that's another 5,000 pages, whatever. And it's like, I stare at these things, and even if I have them digital, it's like, how do you move with this much knowledge? And then you pull up your iPad and you've got a sticker on the back that's got that image or version of it with all like 1,200 pages in one image. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. That's fine. It's all the parts are in there. Like, you could go to that and say, you know why this isn't working? You don't have the right network of people. You got to go back and actually build your identity or build your accomplishments and this and that. It's identity and autonomy and accomplishments, and learn how to speak it. And it's helpful because it's a great diagnostic tool for why things aren't working and some of the endeavors that we have.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not a replacement for 1,200 pages, but what it does is it creates a place to start coordination from. And then you can pursue stuff in depth that makes sense, that's relevant to you, right?
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. What do you think, as you're being asked by different either people or organizations? I mean, it's always people, but as a representation of the organizations they're in, what is the reason that they're looking for your help with the sketch map? Like, Eric, we have this problem. Can you help us with it? Like, what's the genesis of how you get to work with Google, as an example?
Well, I mean, look, it's like anything else. I think that there's. You actually mentioned that part of what you find valuable about these isn't just for your own individual learning, but for the transferability of it to someone else. Right? So if you're trying to lead teams, you're trying to build an organization, you're trying to mobilize folks to row the boats in the same direction, speaking metaphorically, right? But nobody knows what's a boat, what direction are we going, what are we trying to get to, right? It becomes very difficult to create that coordination. So I think what people, I sort of fundamentally put in two categories. People either want these to get unstuck or they want it to get ahead. It's one of those two, or some combination of those two. And so I think what's appealing to people is they recognize like, we're stuck here. And as a group, I don't know how to get us unstuck, or we're doing well, but I want to get ahead, or we want to accelerate. We want to, and so those are a change of situation that are sometimes so dramatic compared to status quo that it's really hard to mobilize people and get them coordinated and quote unquote on the same page. So I literally create imagery on the same page to get everybody there.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, there's multiple places where the people watching or listening to this can find you. Let's talk a little bit about TikTok. What was the influence for you, or what was your thinking when I'm going to try TikTok and see what happens? I remember before, when you were first doing this, you had YouTube, the different social media sites. This wasn't quite hitting the way you thought, but for some reason, TikTok like exploded.
Well, I mean, this is one of those things. Like I said, I'm as trendy as a librarian, and so I had no misgivings that I was somehow going to be explosively trendy on any of the platforms. But if I'm going to sort of, in all humbleness, I will tell you that the only reason I actually really ended up on TikTok as a place to even attempt was because I tried it on YouTube, I tried it on Instagram, I tried it on Facebook, I tried it on all these various platforms, and it was flat. Like, I don't know if the marketplace had become so inundated with just so much content, and people were, and frankly, I couldn't understand what the algorithms were serving up and how to get to people. So I think that was part of what led to, all right, TikTok seems to be big. Who's the demographic? Oh, a bunch of, tweeners to 20-something-year-olds, right? And so I thought, okay, well, I'll have to clearly refine what it is I'm doing. I can't be doing 20-minute YouTube videos on TikTok. That doesn't work, right? And so I did some refining. I did some work on it. But what I did speculate could be helpful, because you've got 1 to 3 seconds before people swipe right past you, and you've got 30 to 60 seconds at most to really keep them engaged. And so I reframed how I used my visuals to be really fast. Right. And instead of having like some prepared image that I'm pointing at, like a teacher with a, with like a yardstick pointing at the chalkboard, I just started making these things appear in front of me as I'm talking, and working it that way. And, I played around with it enough. And also, look, if I'm going to be honest, it was 2021 when I think I started. And, to get 500,000 followers in 2 years was a combination of really a couple things. One, it was the fact that many people were stuck at home. All the traditional patterns of being out in the real world had been broken. And I think that the TikTok platform was surging. I don't know that if I started it again today, if I would reach that level of hit, if that makes sense, because I don't know if the algorithm works the same as it did then. And I don't know if the audience has become so saturated that maybe I wouldn't have done as well. But the other part is that, I don't know how to put it. You can either try to beat the algorithm, which is what most people try to do, or you can join the algorithm. And when my daughter pointed out, classic Gen Z move, she goes, "Dad, you can just boost your views." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" She's like, "Yeah, right there." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't have time to, like some of these creators, it's like their full-time job to try to create this stuff. It's like, I don't have time for that. I got a day job." So I'm like, all right, let me try boosting views. I put like 10, $20 or something into it to see what would happen. And the thing is, you can boost the views. Like, you can pay TikTok to boost the views, right? But you can't artificially boost likes, comments, reshares, favorites, follows, right? So those things all have to organically be earned. And so I thought, I'll do the boosting of the views, because I'm going to find out really fast that this is working or not working. Because all boosting does to something that's not working is help people discover they don't like it faster. Right? So in this case, though, I boosted it, and apparently it must have been decent, because again, 500,000 followers in 2 years. So clearly it had some impact. And so, yeah, it's so I don't like to share my success on that. Like, oh my gosh, this is how to be an influencer. I really popped. It's like, no, I had to fail on multiple platforms, and not have success and tweak and change and boost views. And yeah, so now I have a pretty good sense of how to get there.
What would you say, like, out of that experience, what was the most valuable learning that you produced for yourself?
For me, the most valuable thing I learned from a practical standpoint was really twofold. One, for me, short form messages were like 10 minutes. If you can explain something complex in 10 minutes, right? That's pretty good. That was YouTube thinking, right? Yeah. I think one of the most valuable things was what I call a different frame of thinking. I ended up, instead of thinking in terms of how can I tell a complex story in a relatable way, I ended up creating, really, my metaphor is three forms of it. Okay. Teaser, trailer, movie. And what I started realizing is like, okay, there's a movie version of the story I can tell. Right. I've led, business leader sessions in large rooms that take 2-3 hours to go through. Right. That's the movie form. Right. But nobody's going to sit around for a movie if they don't have a sense of what kind of value you're going to bring out of it. So they have trailers. Movie trailers are like 3 to 5 minutes, and so before I invest 3 hours, I'd like to see this in 3 minutes. Well, TikTok introduced a whole other generation of it, which is more like the teaser. You got a couple seconds to hook, and you've got less than 60 seconds to tell your whole story. And that was not a skill I would say that I had until then. And I found that to be incredibly valuable, that I could step into that and find a way to bring my visual storytelling into such a concise format. And then I create a way for people to go, get longer forms of it if they wanted it. But that was lesson one, was how to create that teaser, trailer, movie thinking in terms of telling a story and telling a narrative. And then I think that was part one. Part two was, we are in a really complex setup with, really 4 active generations in the workplace. You could argue 5, I suppose, but really 4 active generations in the workplace. And because times, trends, language, and things have changed so much, so fast in the last 25 years, to suggest that Gen Z and boomers understand each other is probably a bit of a misstatement, right? And so one of the things that I wanted to test is, does my message reach across the generations? And I don't know that in business, the business leaders of each generation know how to reach the other generations listening. Because it doesn't matter what we say, right? It matters what other people listen. And so one of the other most valuable things I found was, it gave me a really practical way to test if my narratives could reach across the generations. At that point, I had already done Forbes articles. I had already done, other things. I knew where I realized that there was an issue is, I remember speaking at a university, hundreds of students, right? And I said, oh, and here's a QR code if you want to access my Forbes articles. And what the nice thing about a QR code is that you get immediate visceral feedback, right? Immediate, because, the phones either go up for the QR code or they don't.
Yeah.
Right. And so all of a sudden I'm sitting at a university and like 1 or 2 phones go up for the QR code. And I'm like, oh, do y'all even know what Forbes is? And they chug, they're like, oh, we've heard of it, but we don't read Forbes. And I realized, like, oh, I'm in a generational divide. Right. And I said, also, if you use that QR code, it'll also take you to the link to get to my TikTok station, where I've gotten hundreds of thousands of followers in, a matter of a year or two, and all the phones went up. Right. But when I present to business leaders that are all Gen X and boomers, and I say TikTok, they're like, I don't have a TikTok account.
Yeah.
And none of the phones go up. So it was a really valuable lesson that if we want to coordinate across the generations as business leaders, as organizations, and frankly, even in society, we have to know what fits for different people to hear us the way we need for them to hear us, so that we can coordinate together. So that was a really valuable lesson for me too.
Oh, that's great. So, all right. The other topic I wanted to touch on are the books that you've published, where you can kind of get all this mixed together, right? You've got the images, sort of the sketch map stuff that's inside the books, but they're simple for careers and for team amplifiers, career amplifiers, team amplifiers. What is there a third one I'm missing? I'm besides
No. I mean, I do have a contribution to a book that was also a USA Today bestseller as well, but it's not, the full book's not me. It's just a chapter on leadership in there. But but the 2 books that I actually authored that are on Amazon, that were the Amazon bestsellers, those are, as you're saying, team amplifiers. Right? Like how to mobilize teams in rapid change, and career amplifiers, right? How to get unstuck and get ahead in your career. So those were the 2 that I did. Yeah.
What's great about it, and I have multiple copies of both, is they're small, simple, and easy to read, and you just go to the chapter that's relevant to the situation you're in, and you can have a whole session you lead with your team about it. Let's try this. It's like they're super valuable.
That was the intention. I mean, first of all, I don't want to sit there and write 500 pages, and I don't want to read 500 pages. So the thing is, like, give me something I can use quickly. And what I set out for in those books, and I think that they've hit the mark in that regard, is I wanted to create really small micro practices, if you will. right? Like just really transferable, scalable, and sustainable practices we could all across the generations, no matter what role you're in the organization, right? That it could be really easy to either for yourself, like to help your own career, or as a team leader, right? Pass across your team that would amplify your coordination and ability to move forward in a way you couldn't before. And we're talking practices that, I don't know, what do they take 5 minutes to learn?
Yeah.
Like you can literally start learning them in 5 minutes, start using them in 5 minutes. And now all of a sudden it's like, hey, wait, that really worked.
Yeah. Better by next is the one that I think I miss. It's such a missed opportunity because when I first was thinking about it, it's like, we do these big projects, we should, postmortem or better by next them. And it's not just big projects. It's really anything you're doing that you're not satisfied with the outcome, or even if you are satisfied with the outcome, what really worked here that we could take and duplicate and scale so that we don't have to go through this whole process again. And it's like a consistent breakdown I notice all the time, because when you're head down, butt up, just trying to get through the next thing, you don't think like, we're back where we started 6 months ago because we didn't stop to look at what was working and what wasn't. And it could, even a company like ours, it could cost us hundreds of thousands, not millions of dollars in lost sales or like unnecessary costs that can kill you and really put you in a bad spot. So, I mean, that's worth the book alone.
Well, I mean, look, postmortems in business have been around a long time. I think what's fun about Better by Next is, again, it just gives a crisp language you can use. Like, first of all, if everybody says, hey, let's better by next this, or let's be by end this, like all of a sudden it's like, hey, we can do something with this. And all I tried to do that was a little bit different is to make it as simple as possible, right? And the idea was, okay, so there's really only 3 things you probably need to tinker with if you're going to try to make something better by the next time. So once you set that out, it's like, okay, do we need to change the quantity of something, the quality of something, or the frequency of something? Yeah. And what are those? And because, I remember, you remember perhaps as well, the famous quote, right? That was Nelson Mandela's. He said, I never lose. I either win or I learn.
Right. Such a great.
Well, except that what I noticed, I love the quote. The quote's really inspiring. The problem is that I noticed is that, okay, but how do you learn from the fail? How do you learn from what didn't work? And that's what inspired me to create Better by Next, which was, I'm going to give a very simple framework to make it easy to learn by the next time. Right. So how do we make this better by next? How do we learn by next? How do we improve by next? Right.
Yeah, it's so great because one of the things I hear said over and over in our meetings is we really need to think about this before we do it. What I realize is missing is how to think about it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what's the criterion standards? Are we doing SWOT analysis? Is it threat, opportunities, obligation? Like what exactly are we thinking and what's the foundation? Because if it's just seems like a good idea, it rarely is. Right. Because not everybody shares the same background to know what makes an idea good versus bad. And then it becomes everyone's fault instead of like accountability of you wanted to do it this way. And I'm supporting you because I had assumed, which was my fault, that you knew what you were doing. And I've noticed like I've had to let people go, and it's on me. Right at the top of the company, I misassessed the people were sometimes just moving the shells around. It was like a shell game, just trying to hide it. I heard it in a talk on the All In podcast recently, where they're saying they'll acquire companies and they would find there's people at the top of the company that were inventing accomplishments and hiding failures.
Yeah.
And like I was like, oh my God, I have seen that happen, and I didn't think about it quite that way. But it's an eye opener. I think Better by Next is one of the ways to avoid that if you're using it.
Yeah, for sure. Look, you don't actually learn very much from succeeding
because we moved on. Like we're
winners because it worked.
It's a celebration. Oh yeah,
it worked. It worked. I mean, where I find I do the most learning is when I don't succeed. As long as I have a practice for how to deconstruct what I can, do differently. So what's one or more things you can start doing differently? What's one or more things you can stop doing differently? And what new capability did I pick up, even though I didn't succeed at what I meant to do? Is there anything new I could do that I couldn't before? And those are the 3 areas that I found most helpful to inventory every time I fail to accomplish something the way I meant to. Okay, if I can't come up with one or more things that I can start doing differently that I wasn't before, or one or more things that I can't stop doing that I was doing, or some new capability, then I have not done justice to learning from my fail.
That's great. Oh, that's so good. All right. Well, before we wrap, I want to know just concisely, what can internet trolls teach us?
You know, I don't know directly what they can teach us, but indirectly, what I learned, as you can imagine, with working on TikTok for a couple of years of 500,000 folks, I got a number of troll comments, and I think that it was fascinating when I reached out to other influencers. I said, "What do you do with these trolls?" They said, "Just ignore them. It only fans the flames. It only fuels the fire, right?" And they said, "Just ignore it." And so I did for a little while, and I realized I'm just not a step over the trash kind of person. And I'm like, what can I do about this that's positive, that's constructive? And I received one that was really offensive to me. Most of them didn't bother me much, but this one was really offensive. And I thought, you can't do this. Like, you can't go around on the internet and do this. And I was going to send a nasty gram. And it occurred to me instead that, they don't know who I am. I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
What would happen if I just replied kindly? And I just wanted to see what would somebody who is that mean do if all of a sudden, instead of getting meanness back, right, fighting fire with fire or ignoring it, what if it turns out little small acts of kindness and reminding someone there's a human on the other side? I wonder what that would do. And so I did it, and I started getting responses back. I started keeping track, and it turns out I started responding for an entire year. I responded to all my troll comments with small statements of kindness. They were relevant. I catered them, I tailored them to each one. And what I found out is that, of the ones that responded, about half never responded, but the half that did respond, they either walked back their what they said, like, "Hey, I didn't really mean that," or they outright apologized, like, "Hey, I'm really sorry." And I'm like, oh, interesting. Like, the moment you realize there's a human on the other side, right? Yeah. You become a human rather than a troll. And that's taught me both online and in real life. Like, just remember our humanity. Like, instead of, getting upset when somebody says something you think is offensive, just remind them there's a human over here. And it turns out it worked really well. In fact, 20% of those that actually were trolling me ended up following me after those acts of kindness.
Wow. It's also good advice for anybody that has a business on Yelp, because if there's anywhere trolls hang out, it's on Yelp all day long.
There you go. Well, you would know that even better than I do, for sure. So,
well, tell us. So we talked about TED Talks, we talked about your books, we talked about your TikTok, we talked about your career. Is there one place everyone can go that all those places are linked together?
There's if somebody goes to my LinkedIn profile and clicks on the website, there's my access.nexpectations.com has all of the different outlets, including sketch maps. If you want to download sketch maps, see the TED Talks, go to the social media channels, some other sort of compiled some videos there to help in different areas of career and business. So that's all on there if somebody's interested.
I would say start with the TikTok just to get a taste for it, and then dig into the TED Talks, and then buy some books.
Well, if you have a TikTok account, you don't need to get one just to explore my stuff. It's also on Instagram too, but for whatever reason, the Instagram algorithm wasn't quite as kind to me as the TikTok one. So
the social media gods, they dictate our life in some ways.
In some ways.
Thanks for the time today. Thanks for being on with us, and I really appreciate your friendship and what you've helped me with over the years. And it's been great to hear your story here. So thanks again.
Well, right back at you, Mike. You and your family and the businesses you built, the ways you've had to adapt to all the changing things that are going on, from global pandemics to challenges of location to how to scale in unusual circumstances, and just really has been a remarkable demonstration to a lot of folks too. So it's an honor to be here. Glad we got the time together.
All righty. Well, we're signing off, people. Till next time, I guess.